Good afternoon, producer Susan. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Jerzee Joe. How are you?
I'm fine, thanks. Are the leaves all changed out by you?
They're starting to. I think this coming weekend might be the optimal weekend, but loving this beautiful weather.
Good. And Penn State had a big win this past weekend over what, UCLA?
Yeah, but the big test is going to come this weekend. We're on the road to UCS, or I'm sorry, USC,
Or-
University of Southern California. We're on the road.
And Vanderbilt in that historic win over Alabama.
Oh, amazing.
Does that have any impact on Penn State's standing?
Uh, no, but I mean, the only thing better than Michigan losing this weekend was the fact that Vanderbilt beat Alabama and knocked them out of the one spot.
All right. All right. You want to hear what we're going to try to squeeze in today?
Yeah, what's on the agenda?
All right, got a bunch of clips. Anyway, today's the October the 8th. By the way, daylight saving times ends in about first week in November, so we got about 4 more weeks of daylight savings time.
And can we just stop with the clocks already?
You and me both. I would prefer daylight savings time year round, but anyway,
I see. I prefer the other way around. I think the only thing this country can agree on is that we just need to stop with the clock.
stop back and forth. Exactly. All right. All right. Our quote of the week, by the way, is from actor Samuel L. Jackson. You know who he is, right?
Yep.
Who tells us why he doesn't think guns are responsible for the many shooting incidents that we've talked about here, over the past year or so. A very interesting perspective. Um, in our stupidest and scariest thing I've heard all week, we'll play another clip of interviewing, Justin Awad. He does these interviews with young people on the street. We've done him before.
Mhm. Yep.
And we have another clip of him asking young people of voting age very simple questions that you assume any eighth grader should be able to answer. Well, they can't. So we'll play another one of those. Um, in our runner-up to the stupidest thing I've heard all week, Kamala Harris did an interview on six that was played on 60 Minutes this past Sunday, and we'll play an answer that she gave to the interviewer uh, that is nothing but gibberish, word salad. I mean, it was almost my winner for the stupidest thing I've heard all week, but it's the runner-up. It's the honorable mention. And then, since we're going to be on the Kamala Harris topic, we'll play a clip of her showing her trying to ad-lib after her teleprompter goes on the fritz during a campaign rally speech. Um, we'll tell you how many teenagers in this country don't know how to swim. Do you know how to swim?
Yes, I do.
How old are you when you learned how to swim?
Two.
Did you know any kids your age who didn't know how to swim?
No, I think they all knew how to swim.
You and me both, and I was stunned at how many teenagers in this country today don't know how to swim. We have a clip of a young black woman who had previously voted for Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton, explaining why she intends to vote for Donald Trump in November. And you talk about, 180-degree turn. And I think her logic is just very insightful to listen to her logic. Um, and then we're going to talk about a free speech case from the state of Colorado, um, where they tried to fine a woman uh, under their I forget, hate speech, whatever. She was a web developer. Remember the cake, the wedding cake case a couple of years ago,
Yes.
and which the state of Colorado lost because the court ruled that you can't force somebody to use their creative talent that goes against their religious beliefs. Well, she was
Yes.
a web designer, and she was approached by some gay organization to create a website for their gay organization. She said no. The state of Colorado tried to punish her. She fought. Well, she that case also went to the Supreme Court. She won, and now the state of Colorado has to pay her attorneys $1.5 million. Um, and we'll tell you why the head of the Department of Homeland Security is claiming that FEMA might not have enough funds to cover the costs associated with the next hurricane, which of course is
Which
going
is
to
coming
hit
up.
Tampa tomorrow night.
Yeah.
And our taxpayer lead shot comes to us from Broken Arrow, Oklahoma, where the son of a homeowner shoots and kills not one, not two, but all three masked home invaders who forced their way into the home of the son and the father. You think we can fit that all in?
Sounds like a lot.
All right. So here's Samuel L. Jackson's take on all these. We talked about the club shooting down in Birmingham a week ago. Was it 2 weeks ago?
Yep.
We talked black on black crime and whatnot when we did the FBI crime report. And if you remember, by the way, 40 million new guns and the number of homicides actually went down. Well,
Mhm.
here's Samuel L. Jackson's take on these shootings. He says, I don't think it's about more gun control. I grew up in the South with guns everywhere, and we never shot anyone. This shooting, he's talking about Birmingham, is about people who aren't taught the value of life. What do you think about that?
Yeah.
And I think I told you when I was a teenager, I was on the rifle team. Myself and my teammates literally took our rifles to school twice a week and put them in our lockers at 8 o'clock in the morning. I
Yeah,
told
you can't do that today.
can't do that today. And my high school was not unique. There were most of the high schools that we competed against. There were half a dozen high schools within a 15-mile drive that also had high school rifle teams. Um, so yeah, and I told you in the rural schools, during deer seasons, all the high school kids had rifles in the back of their pickup. You'd look in the windows of the back of the pickup truck because when the days were short and they wanted to go deer hunting, they didn't have to go home, get their guns, and then go out. So they went directly from when school let out at 3 o'clock, they jumped in their truck and they went directly to where they wanted to hunt deer. And they all had guns. Every one of them had guns. So again, Samuel L. Jackson, I don't think it's about more gun control. I grew up in the South with guns everywhere, and we never shot anyone. This shooting is about people who aren't taught the value of life. And I couldn't agree more. So, uh, anyway, anything you want to add to that?
No, I agree with him. I just see it in general crimes today. These thugs that are and they're young kids, they're teenagers that are
Yep.
committing these crimes with like just reckless, regard for anything. That it's like, did your mama teach you anything?
In fact, today you're going to hear the ages. I mentioned there were three kids. They were all under the age of 19, and some of them I think were under the age of 18. So I'll go. You'll hear their ages today. All right. So here's the stupidest thing I've heard all week. This is just an AWOD asking some young people on the street, and every one of these young people are of voting age. And what scares the hell out of me is that they are of voting age. Every one of them is eligible to vote. And this is what scares me about who is electing our president. So here we go. Or who is voting to be our next president. And I got to turn this volume up here a little bit. And again, man on the street with young people.
On a compass are
A compass? What is that?
a compass. It like tells you the directions.
He's asking them what are the four points on a compass. I'm gonna back this up again.
Directions on a compass are
A compass? What is that?
a compass. It like tells you the directions.
Oh my God.
Four directions.
What?
What day do they celebrate the 4th of July in England?
What day?
Yeah.
Any day, whichever day it falls on.
Who fought in the Civil War?
Who found it?
Who fought?
But isn't it like Great Britain,
Yeah, against
Australia?
which one? And against who? You're close.
Great Britain.
Who fought in the Civil War? Great Britain and Australia. Here.
England,
Yeah.
Um, the Germans.
Yes. Do you know what the four directions on a compass are?
A compass? What is that?
Does that scare you that all these people are old enough to vote?
Yeah, especially when there's a compass on your iPhone, which many young people have.
Yeah, it just scares the hell out. Anyway, I just shake my head every time. And this is not, he does these things every week. I just happen to play this one today. But I mean, yeah, it's funny. It's sad, it's funny, and it's scary all at the same time.
Yeah.
All right. Anyway, so here, this was kind of like you probably didn't see it. 60 Minutes last week. You probably didn't see it.
There was an episode last night with her.
I'm sorry. You're right. It was 60 Minutes. I'm sorry. It was last night. Here you go. From last night. So he asked, forget what this guy, I think Bill Whitaker, you tell me it's 27 seconds long. When it's done, I'm going to ask you what she said. Here we go.
But it seems that Prime Minister Netanyahu is not listening.
Well, Bill, The work that we have done has resulted in a number of movements in that region by Israel that were very much prompted by or a result of many things, including our advocacy for what needs to happen in the region.
So what did she just say? Do you need me to play that again for you?
That's a lot of words to say nothing.
Here you go, one more time.
But it seems that Prime Minister Netanyahu is not listening.
Well, Bill,
And again, he's asking her if she thinks that Netanyahu is or isn't listening.
the work that we have done has resulted in a number of movements in that region by Israel that were very much prompted by or a result of many things, including our advocacy for what needs to happen in the region.
So what you still can't figure out what she was trying to say, right?
Yeah.
No coherent thought there. All right. Now, by the way, have you ever given a speech from a teleprompter?
No, I've never used the teleprompter, no.
But let me ask you this: have you given essentially the same talk? I know you do a lot of work with service dogs. Have you?
I pretty much have the same speech. And again, I will tailor the speech to the audience, but I'm basically saying the same key phrases over and over again that are pretty much committed to memory at this point.
Right, committed to memory. You're not reading from notes. You don't need a teleprompter, right? You're not looking down, reading from typed notes, right? You're basically extemporaneously, if you will, right?
Yeah, and personally, I like when audience members ask me questions. So you're on the fly, you're working off the cuff, and I can answer any of those questions confidently. And
Okay.
rarely do I ever get, a question that I can't answer. And on those rare occasions, I simply say that I can't answer that question.
All right. Well, here's Kamala Harris yesterday. I'm sorry, it's from October the 4th. Now, she'd been on the campaign trail for 8 solid days, giving this same speech at least once a day, sometimes twice a day. So she had given this speech at least a half a dozen times in the previous week. You would think if you didn't know it verbatim, you could basically speak. I mean, and you ought to know what you're key talking, right? When you have a speech,
Yeah.
it should embody your talking points and it's something called messaging, right? Every politician should have a message.
Mhm.
So you would think she would know what. Anyway, she gets ready to talk, and her teleprompter goes on the fritz. So here's what she thought. Instead of saying, "Well, here's my key points. Here's what's in my speech." Here's what she says instead.
Remember his election.
And there's a pause, and she's still there. This is
so
not.
32 days. 32 days. Okay, we got some business to do. All right. 32 days.
Now, this is still the same clip. How many times has she said 32 days in the last 21 seconds? We're still going.
And we know we will do it. And this is going to be a very tight race until the very end. This is going to be a very tight race until the very end. We are the underdog, and we know we have some hard work ahead. Remember his.
So I want you to, now we're going to do it again. I want you to count how many times she says 32 days in 46 seconds. That's one.
The election.
Twice. Awkward pause.
So 32 days.
3 times.
32 days.
4 times.
Okay, we got some business to do. All right.
But that was 4 times in 23 seconds. And there was an awkward pause in there. I'd be embarrassed as hell if that was me. I don't know. What's your reaction? Does this woman know? I mean, does she even know what?
I mean, there's one point about making a point, emphasizing the point that we're only 32 days away. But yeah, 4 times in 20 seconds.
4 times in 20 seconds, including about a 5-second awkward, like she's looking around like, oh crap, what am I going to say next? It was just, anyway, I just found that just very telling that she really doesn't have a message. Um, anyway, so that's where I came down on that one. All right. Um, so let's move on here a little bit. So teenagers, again, like you, when I was growing up, I didn't know a single teenager who didn't, I mean, what teenager, when I was 8 or 9 or 10 or 12, I didn't know it. All of my friends could swim.
Mhm.
And certainly when I got to be a teenager, we used to work at my grandparents' cattle ranch in the summers and all the neighborhood kids, we had like a little, like a small lake on the property. And after working all day, we'd all jump in the lake and swim. I literally didn't know a single kid my age, either in New Jersey or upstate New York, who didn't know how to swim. So then I saw this article on CBS News about this Washington Wizards player, Jared Butler. Don't know, I'm not a big basketball fan, but they did a story that here's this NBA didn't know how to swim and how he learned to swim and whatnot. And then they started quoting these statistics, which dumbfounded me. Almost 50% of teenagers today under the age of 18 don't know how to swim. And that breaks down to 40% of white kids and 64% of black kids don't know how to swim. And I was just dumbstruck by those statistics. Would you have guessed the numbers were that high?
No, I didn't. And I think that swimming is one of those life skills that you need to know how to do to save your own life.
Absolutely. And by the way, the statistics on drowning are sad, really, in terms of how many kids. But now I think I understand this. Um, if you get thrown overboard and you don't know how to swim in 30 seconds, you'll be dead.
Yeah.
If you know how to swim, in a half an hour later, they'll find you and save you. Um, but wow, 50% of kids, of teenagers, don't know how to swim. Just blew me away. Anyway, you can watch that. I have the link to the CBS News story where you can look it up. CBS News, Jared Butler. But the link is here. Producer Susan, can you put that up on the website?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So you want to hear about this young black woman who explained why she has gone from being a Hillary Clinton Obama voter to being a Donald Trump voter in the next election? Here we go.
Donald Trump is the very first Republican who I have ever voted for in my life. I voted for him for the first time in 2020. Before that, I voted Barack Obama twice, and I voted for Hillary Clinton in 2016. And the only reason I voted for Hillary Clinton in 2016 was because I believed that Donald Trump was a racist, and I also thought that the majority of Republicans and the people who were voting for him were also racist. Then in 2016 hit, and he won. I was so disappointed. I told my sister, I cannot believe that the country that just elected our first black president turned around and elected this man. Then my sister told me, just because people have voted for Donald Trump does not mean that they are racist. I told her, yes, it does. It absolutely means they're racist, because that's what I thought. Then I saw him as president, and I thought that he was a good leader. I think he did a good job, aside from all his mean tweets. So in 2020, I voted for him. And in 2020, I was literally undecided until that third debate with Donald Trump and Joe Biden. I saw Joe Biden get on stage, talk about all the wonderful things that he was going to do should he take office. Then Donald Trump said the same thing to him that we saw him say to Kamala Harris. If you were going to do those things, why haven't you done them? And in Joe Biden's case, he had been Barack Obama's VP for 8 years. And in addition to that, he had also been a senator. So around that time, he had about 40 years in office under his belt. And when Donald Trump asked him that question, that struck out to me, that why didn't you do all these things in 40 years? Then Joe Biden answered that question with an excuse and said the reason he didn't do it was because of the Republicans in Congress. Said also because he was the vice president. And I was thinking, so the Republicans in Congress stopped you from doing all this in 40 years? You couldn't get any of this done in 40 years? That struck out to me. And that made me vote for Donald Trump in 2020. And I remember when I was actually on my way to vote for Donald Trump, my husband and I were in the car riding together. We started talking about the election and who we're voting for. He was voting for Biden. I told him I was voting for Donald Trump. He immediately turned the car around and drove back home, would not take me to the poll to vote for Donald Trump.
I'm going to there's about another minute there, but I just thought that she had great logic.
Yeah.
And everything she's saying about Trump and Biden then, I think, applies equally well to Trump and Harris today. I mean, any comment on her logic?
Yeah, no, she has some rational thought there of, why she chose to vote the way she did.
All right. So you want to move on to Colorado losing the free speech case?
Yeah, and this is not the first time in Colorado that they faced this type of a lawsuit.
Right. And let me make a distinction. Let me tie this back to the wedding cake baker. By the way, the guy that refused to bake the gay wedding cake never refused to sell to gay people. Yeah, and as he said, and he was able to document. He said, there were people in the neighborhood came in. He knew they were gay, and he said, if I have a product on the shelf, anybody, I've never refused to sell it. If you want to come in, you want to buy a dozen brownies, you want to buy a Boston cream pie, you want to buy anything I've already made that is one of my standard products. I always have and always will sold that to people regardless of their race, religion, or sexual preference, and that was well documented. And in the case of this, but the court said, forcing him to decorate a cake that was advocating, gay marriage, was asking him to do something that was a violation of his freedom of expression. And I always like to use this analogy. Say you're a sign maker, and you lost your parents in the Holocaust, to the Nazis. And one day some white supremacist walks in and asks you to make up some banners. They're going to have a white supremacist rally, and he wants you to make these banners with swastikas on them. And you're the son of Jewish parents that were murdered in the Holocaust. Do you think, as a sign maker, you should be forced to use your artistic talents?
Well, I think I'd have to look at the law, but I think that there is actually a difference between your opinions versus hate speech. And I think the Nazi reference might fall under the hate speech.
But let's assume the state you're in doesn't have a hate speech. Let's just assume that there's nothing. But the point is, should a sign maker be forced to use his artistic abilities to make up a sign with swastikas on it?
No.
Well, that's essentially, and so if you agree with that, then you cannot say, so if you agree with that example that no, a Jewish sign maker should not be forced to make a sign with swastikas on it, then a cake maker, by the same logic, should not be forced to make a cake celebrating a gay marriage, and a website developer should not be able to be forced to use her artistic and creative abilities to make a website for a gay organization. There's in my mind, I don't think you can argue any difference between those three. Could you?
No, you're right. They're the same.
Right. Well, anyway, when she refused, the people, and by the way, I think this was another case where this organization was actually targeting. There was obviously 100 other in Colorado. There was 100 other people they could have gone to head that. You can't throw a stick these days without hitting somebody that is, was willing to do a website for you, right?
Yeah.
So clearly they were targeting her. By the way, the cake maker, he continues to get targeted, by the way. People come in and keep testing him. But anyway, so they targeted this woman. She said, no, it goes against my religious beliefs, and be a violation of my freedom of expression. And anyway, they filed a complaint. By the way, they never want to sue her directly. They want to file a complaint with the state, and then they had the state prosecute people on their behalf. So doesn't cost them a nickel out of their own pocket. So they did that, and the state took up their cause. Even after this was after they had already lost the wedding cake case, and it went all the way to Supreme Court, and Supreme Court said no difference between the cake maker and her. And what's taken this long was the argument. The attorneys were saying, well, we believe we should get paid because this was malicious prosecution.
Yeah.
And it took this long for the ruling to come down. and the judgment was for $1.5 million in attorney's fees, which the state of Colorado, I shouldn't say the state of, which the taxpayers of the state of Colorado now have to pay because the state didn't learn its they touched the hot stove the first time with the cake baker, wedding cake maker, got their fingers burned and didn't learn their lesson. So then they touched the hot stove a second time, and it pissed away $1.5 million of taxpayer money in Colorado. So anyway, any comments on that one?
No, they shouldn't be forced to do things that they themselves don't want to do.
Yeah, well, couldn't agree more. So hopefully that'll be the last one of those we see out of Colorado. How much time we got left?
We got about a little less than 10 minutes.
All right. By the way, just a quick one. Everybody's always talking if Donald Trump gets elected, I'm moving to Canada. Do you know last year 150,000 people immigrated to the United States from Canada?
Yeah.
Canada,
free healthcare is not so free, is it? Not so
no.
great.
And I think we talked in the past how long you have to wait. Like if you have that's why people. So we've already talked in prior episodes about people from Canada are traveling to the U.S. and paying out of pocket for medical procedures in this country because they don't want to wait the 6 to 9 months to have the procedure done in Canada. But this isn't just coming here for a medical procedure. This is literally immigrating. They're saying, we've had it. We can't take this place. Housing's out of control. Medical care sucks. So literally more than 150,000 people have immigrated from Canada to the United States. All right. That's not in the notes, but if anybody wants to send me a note, I can send you the link to that, or you can Google.
Or I can post that online too.
Okay. All right. So about 2 weeks ago, Secretary of Homeland Security Alejandro Mayorkas was testifying before Congress, and in a plea for funding, he told Congress that they might not have enough money to fund all the disaster recovery reliefs if there's another hurricane this season. And guess what? There's another hurricane this season. Well, during that testimony, what he neglected to mention to Congress is that so far this fiscal year, FEMA has spent almost $1 billion, that's billion with a B, to fund housing for illegal aliens living in this country. And the way that funding takes place, they either give it directly to cities, like when New York City Mayor Adams says, we've spent $1 million or 10 million, or actually I think that was like $50 million housing illegal immigrants in hotels. And he calls up the federal government and says, hey, we need help. And then there's, what an NGO is?
I don't think I do.
An NGO is a non-governmental organization. So there's in every city, in fact, I've got a friend in Denver who's involved in an NGO is a non-government organization. It's like a nonprofit, but it's created to do things like provide housing for illegal immigrants. And NGOs are everywhere. Just look up just NGOs. And by the way, they make a lot of money because they pay themselves ridiculous salaries. So an NGO, for instance, might rent hotel rooms or even buy a hotel and then rent them out and then take money from the government to cover the cost. They may tell the government, well, we have an empty hotel and we'll be happy to house these illegal immigrants for $200 per night per room. And of course, they're making a fortune by doing this. So they're technically nonprofits, but they get their money by paying, their executive directors several $100,000. So FEMA either gives the money to the cities. So FEMA is not renting the rooms directly, but they're either giving the money to the cities or they're giving the money to these NGOs, non-government organizations, nonprofits, which in turn are then paying for the housing. So here's a quote from the Link story, I'll give you the link. Here's a quote. Over 2 years, more than $1.4 billion has been committed from FEMA-administered programs to support non-federal entities, those would be the NGOs, that are taking care of migrants. DHS allocated $780 million for the migrant crisis last year, initially through the FEMA Emergency Food and Shelter Program, which funds relief not associated with natural disasters, and then through a new FEMA Shelter and Services Program, which was authorized in late 2022 by Congress to respond to the migrant crisis. The $640 million spent this year comes solely from the Shelter and Services Program. So yes, it's a program within FEMA, but the point is FEMA's budget is FEMA's budget. You can move money around from one program to another. And what the defenders are saying, well, but it was earmarked for this program. What you've got a budget. Okay, yeah, you had program A, program B. Nothing says you can't move money from program A to program B if program B is more important than you're running your show. So that part never made the evening news, by the way. Well, that's why we call this the situation news and perspective you won't hear on TV. No news program has reported why they all reported on every one of them. I defy you to find a major network news program that did not report on FEMA claiming that they might run out of money for disaster relief. I know for a fact that every single network news program reported that. I also know for a fact that not one single one of them reported that FEMA has spent over $1 billion providing housing to migrants in this country, none of which was on an emergency disaster basis. So that's the perspective you didn't hear on TV. Any comment on that one?
Yeah, I mean, FEMA's got their hands full. They're still cleaning up from Helene, and we're about to get hit with Milton.
Yep. All right. So let's move on to taxpayer relief shots. And in the interest of time, I'll just let the sheriff of Santa Rosa County, Florida, tell you why we call them taxpayer relief shots. And here we go.
Somebody's breaking in your house, you're more than welcome to shoot them in Santa Rosa County. We prefer that you do, actually. Hopefully, you'll save the taxpayers money.
All right. And all this stuff about, like in New Jersey and some other California, you can only have a 10-round magazine. Well, if you get into a gunfight with 3 people, do you think you might want more than 10 rounds in your gun?
I think I would want more than 10 rounds if I was up against 3 people.
All right. Well, here's how this went in Oklahoma, and listen very carefully to the type of gun the guy had, to this 23-year-old son of the homeowner had.
Tonight, a Broken Arrow family turns the tables on 3 burglars, and now we've just learned that the sheriff arrested the suspected getaway driver on felony murder charges.
Oh, and listen to the ages of the kids, and we'll talk about why the getaway driver who never entered the house is being charged with murder. I'm going to back this up here.
Turns the tables on 3 burglars, and now we've just learned that the sheriff arrested the suspected getaway driver on felony murder charges.
Elizabeth Rodriguez was questioned for hours tonight after deputies say she turned herself in. 2 Works for You reporter Katie Wisely is live in Wagner County, where an afternoon home invasion left 3 people dead. Katie.
Brian and Karen, good evening. Police tell me the homeowner did not know the 3 men who broke into the home wearing ski masks, but it does appear they were trying to break into this home behind me. Now, after speaking with the homeowner and his son, the sheriff says there's only 1 person left alive to answer questions. Some wouldn't think a nice neighborhood in the outskirts of Broken Arrow would be prone to burglaries, but Leon Simmons says it's true.
It's shocking that somebody finally got caught.
Within the past 7 to 8 months, he's been a target.
We noticed more people driving by slow in the neighborhood, and it's just, they're casing out the place.
And so have many of his neighbors.
If you notice somebody 2 or 3 times in a truck or something like that, drive by slow, most of the lots are sold. They're not looking for a place to buy. They're looking for stuff to steal.
Wagner County Sheriff deputies say they believe that's what 3 suspects had planned this afternoon. But the burglary ended with them dead inside this home.
Nobody is at home or anybody involved in any altercations till now.
Sheriff deputies say 2 juveniles between 16 and 17 and 1 18.
2 juveniles between the ages of 16 and 17.
Yeah.
Year-old dressed in black and masks covering their faces broke into this home through a back door around 12:30. Deputies say a father and 23-year-old son were inside, and after a quick exchange of words, the son fired an AR-15 at the intruders. All 3 suspects were dead by the time investigators got there.
Preliminary investigation, it looks like it was self-defense, maybe a case of stand your ground.
Deputies found a pair of brass knuckles and a pocket knife on 2 of the men and say a 21-year-old woman turned herself into the Broken Arrow Police Department. They believe she was driving the car that dropped off the 3 men and planned to pick them up.
And the bad thing was today, in all 4 of these houses, 4 out of 5 houses, there happened to be somebody home. They could have, caught any one of us at home at the wrong time.
This homeowner, thankful his neighbor and son had protection.
Everybody out here that I know has guns in the house. I don't know if somebody kicked.
Yeah, by the way, you hear what he said? Everybody out here has guns in their house?
Yes.
So aside from Texas, Oklahoma is right next to Texas. And guess what?
Yeah.
I've been to Oklahoma a lot. And if you think people in Oklahoma don't have guns, you are woefully uninformed. So I don't know what these three kids were thinking.
In the door at my house if I could have got to it in time.
And now Leon Simmons thinks about his future and what life's really like now.
I may have to think about carrying something or keeping it handy by the door before you answer the door now.
21-year-old Elizabeth Rodriguez faces 3 counts of murder and 3 counts of burglary. As for the intruders, their families have been told of their deaths. Reporting live in Wagner County, Katie Wisely, 2 Works for you.
So why is the woman who was sitting in the car, why is she being charged with 3 counts of murder?
Because she was a part of it.
She was involved in a felony,
Yeah.
in which somebody died. And even though she had nothing to do with the pulling of the trigger, if you're involved, if you participate in a felony and there's somebody dies, even by the way, even if the death is a heart attack, you can be charged with murder. That's the way the law works in every state.
Yep.
All right. Anything you want to add before we wrap up?
Yeah, I just hope the people of Florida survive this Cat 5 storm.
Well, we'll do an update on that when we talk next week. Anyway, if you got nothing else you want to add, let's wrap up here. I want to thank everybody who listened to this podcast for giving up 30 minutes out of your busy day to listen to me ramble on about things I find of interest and importance. By the way, even if I couldn't read this, I think I could probably do this by heart by now. I could talk about 32 days. If you want to see some of the materials and story links you heard us talk about today, you can find them on the Jerzee Joe website at jerzee-joe.com. Just remember to spell Jerzee J-E-R as in Robert, Z as in zebra, E-E, J-E-R-Z-E-E, jerzee-joe.com. And if you want to email me with a comment, question, or suggested show topic, you can do that by sending me an email to just joe at jerzee-joe.com. Just remember to spell Jersey with an R, a Z, and 2 E's. And with that, Producer Susan, unless you've got something else to add, I'll sign off and talk to you next week.
All right.
Talk to you
Enjoy
next
this
week.
beautiful weather.
You too. Take care. Bye-bye.